They said it was just a party gone wrong. But why were cameras already rolling before the chaos even began? Why did the police arrest the victim instead of chasing the men with guns? And how does a rising star go from protecting her family to facing criminal charges? This is not just about GloRilla, this is about a system that punishes the innocent, silences the truth, and lets the real criminals walk free. You are not ready for what you are about to hear. They told everyone it was just a party that went bad. That GloRilla was simply caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. But what they never explained, what they could not explain, was why cameras were already recording before anything even started. Late that night, 3 masked men broke into her home, guns in hand. They came in ready to take whatever they could get their hands on. This was no random robbery. It was a full-on home invasion. GloRilla's family was inside, shocked, terrified, and trying to stay safe. The intruders must have thought no one was home. But someone was. And when one of them fired a shot, everything turned dangerous in an instant. By the time the police finally arrived, the people who had broken in were already gone. Not a single suspect was caught, and no one was arrested. All that was left behind were flashing sirens, the loud chop of helicopters circling overhead, and a heavy sense of fear that spread through the entire neighborhood like wildfire. Doors were locked tighter. Curtains were drawn. People peeked through their windows, whispering to each other and wondering what had just happened. The home that had been broken into belonged to none other than rising rap star GloRilla, offstage as Gloria Hallelujah Woods. But she was not even in the city when the incident took place. GloRilla had been out of town, working on new music and attending meetings. Her career had been moving fast, and she had been spending more and more time away from home. While she was gone, her family was left to deal with the chaos. And when they heard strange sounds outside the house and noticed suspicious activity, they did what anyone would do in that situation. They called the police, hoping for help and protection. It was a decision based on trust. They believed that the authorities would come, handle things professionally, and make sure everyone inside was safe. But what happened after that was something nobody could have expected. Instead of comfort and support, the family found themselves surrounded by questions, assumptions, and tension. Some officers treated the situation with seriousness, while others appeared cold, as if they had already made up their minds about who was guilty and who was not. The vibe shifted from concern to suspicion within minutes, and that shift left the family feeling exposed, unheard, and confused. The police began asking strange questions, not just about the break-in, but about the people inside the house. Who else lives here? Do you know anyone who might be involved in anything illegal? It felt less like a rescue, and more like an interrogation. Some family members were asked to step outside. Others were told to sit down and remain silent. Neighbors watched from a distance, wondering if something bigger was going on. Rumors started spreading within hours. People whispered that the house might have been targeted for reasons deeper than just a random robbery. Was it jealousy? Was it something personal? Or was it connected to GloRilla's rising fame? With GloRilla away, her team scrambled to figure out what had happened. She was notified immediately, and although she tried to remain calm, those close to her say she was deeply shaken. She loved her family more than anything. To know that they were caught in the middle of something dangerous, without her there to protect them, crushed her. Behind the scenes, her management team pushed for answers. They contacted legal experts, private security firms, and even independent investigators to make sure no stone was left unturned. But still no suspects. No clear motive. No resolution. The break-in itself seemed carefully planned. The intruders knew what they were doing. They entered quietly, avoided cameras, and disappeared before anyone could catch a good look. They left little behind, no fingerprints, no obvious clues, nothing to help move the investigation forward. And with GloRilla being a public figure, some began questioning whether this was more than just a random crime. Some fans speculated that someone wanted to send a message. Others feared that as GloRilla's fame continued to grow, so would the dangers that came with it. The fear in the house lingered for days. Even after the sirens stopped and the officers left, the silence inside the home felt loud. GloRilla's younger cousins did not want to sleep in their own rooms. Her aunt kept the lights on at night. Her mother, though strong on the outside, admitted to close friends that she could not shake the feeling of being watched. Meanwhile, online conversations exploded. Social media users debated what might have happened. Some blamed the industry, saying fame always brings unwanted attention. Others blamed the police for not taking quicker action. A few even blamed GloRilla, accusing her of leaving her family vulnerable while chasing her career. But those who know her best say that is far from the truth. GloRilla had always taken care of her people. She had always made sure they were safe, supported, and surrounded by love. What happened that night was something no one could have predicted. And while no arrests were made, and the suspects remained unknown, one thing became painfully clear: the deeper someone goes into fame, the more shadows begin to follow. As the deputies searched the house for clues, they claimed they smelled marijuana. Just like that, their focus changed. They stopped talking about the stolen things, the gun, or the men who broke in. Instead, they turned their attention to what was inside GloRilla's closet. That was the beginning of a completely different story. A few days later, GloRilla did something most celebrities never would. She walked into Forsyth County Jail and turned herself in. No drama, no delay, just quiet courage. And what was she being charged with? Not for planning the invasion, not for hiding anything, not for lying to the police. She was charged for marijuana. That was allegedly found in her closet. That is all. Let that sink in. She was not even in the state when the break-in happened. Her family called for help. And somehow, she is the one facing charges. They said she had more than an ounce of marijuana, enough to call it possession of a controlled substance. Instead of dropping music in the studio, GloRilla ended up in court. Yes, she posted bail. But the real cost was something much deeper. The message sent was loud and clear. Even if you are the victim, you can still be treated like the one who did something wrong. Fans were shocked. Online, people exploded with anger. Why was no one talking about the break-in? Why was her arrest all over the news like she had been caught doing something terrible? This did not feel like justice, it felt like betrayal. And while GloRilla faced the system, the men who broke into her home were still free. Her lawyers spoke out right away. And really, who could blame them? From the moment she was arrested, it was obvious something was not right. Drew Finneling and Marissa Goldberg, two well-known lawyers who usually take on major national cases, stepped in and did not hold back. They called GloRilla's arrest exactly what it was: a clear abuse of power. Their words hit hard, exposing just how messed up the system's priorities have become. And they did not stop there. They made one thing absolutely clear: GloRilla was not even at home when the break-in happened. She had no idea her house had been invaded until someone reached out to tell her. The people staying there were her family, and they were left deeply shaken. Not only by the armed robbery, but by everything that happened after. When the police showed up, instead of focusing on the masked intruders with guns, they flipped the script. They got a search warrant not for stolen goods or bullets but because they claimed to smell marijuana. That tiny detail became the whole story. The robbery and the danger her family faced. That was pushed aside. Finneling and Goldberg spoke with honesty and fire. They said GloRilla was not being treated like a victim, she was being punished like a criminal. The justice system had gotten so lost, it could not even recognize the real danger anymore. Her family was left scared, and the police were more interested in searching her closet than catching the real criminals. No arrests were made. No follow-up. Just silence. That is when a voice of reason stepped up. Georgia State Representative Eric Bell saw what was really going on. As news of the arrest spread and public anger grew, Bell took a bold stand. He did not hold back. The Democratic lawmaker from Jonesboro spoke from the heart. He said what many people were already thinking. No one should be afraid of getting arrested for doing the right thing. It should not matter who you are, where you live, or how famous you might be. GloRilla's case became bigger than just her. It became a symbol for every victim who ever called the police and ended up treated like a suspect instead. Bell was not just upset, he was determined to act. To him, this was not just a mistake, it was a sign of something far more serious. A system that keeps turning against the very people it is supposed to protect. A system that often targets Black victims, treating them with suspicion instead of support. So Bell backed a powerful new bill, House Bill 464. A law aimed at making sure what happened to GloRilla never happens again. But he did not stop with that. He went deeper. He pointed out a painful truth. Far too often, when Black people are victims of crime, they are the ones who end up in trouble just for asking for help. And as more people heard his message, they started to agree. This was no longer just about one celebrity. It was about fairness, humanity, and doing what is right. The media scrambled to cover the growing support for the bill, but Bell made his mission clear: this was about real change. Not just for GloRilla, but for every person like her who deserves protection, not punishment. Next, viewers were about to learn what House Bill 464 really meant and why it was shaking the system from within. At first glance, HB 464 might not seem like a big deal. It does not come with flashy headlines or viral speeches. But do not be fooled. This bill could mark one of the biggest steps toward real justice reform in a long time, and it all started with GloRilla's case. That moment lit the spark. HB 464 is built on a simple but powerful idea: protect the people who need help. The bill would stop police from arresting victims over small, unrelated issues when they are just trying to report a crime. Things like minor drug possession, unpaid fines, or old warrants, none of which have anything to do with the emergency they are calling about. Because here is the hard truth. Many people, especially in vulnerable communities, stay quiet when something awful happens. Why? Because they are scared that if they call the police, they will end up in handcuffs too. That fear is not made up, it is real. And sometimes, it is deadly. Representative Eric Bell made it clear. This bill is not about ignoring crime. It is about using common sense. It is about treating victims with care, not suspicion. It is about safety, fairness, and being human. And honestly, it is hard to argue with that. No one should have to choose between calling for help and staying out of jail. What is more surprising? HB 464 is getting support from both sides of the aisle. It already passed through the Judiciary Non-Civil Committee, which is no small feat. Lawmakers, Democrats and Republicans are starting to realize something is broken. They see that what happened to GloRilla could happen to anyone. The bill is not law yet, but the support is growing fast. Bell is not slowing down, and many are standing with him. But while change crawls forward, one hard truth still hangs in the air. The people who broke into GloRilla's home are still free. Now let's talk about the thing nobody in power wants to say out loud. Why are the real criminals still walking the streets? What happened at GloRilla's house was not some petty crime. It was violent. It was terrifying. Armed men burst into her home, scared her family, and left with stolen goods. One of them even fired a shot. That is not just burglary. That is a serious home invasion. And yet, days later, the only person arrested in connection with that night was GloRilla. Think about that. Police said they launched a major investigation. They sent canine dogs, flew drones, flooded the neighborhood with patrol cars, but none of that led to arrests. No suspects. No recovered property. Just a search warrant because they smelled weed in a closet. That changed the entire direction of the case. Instead of focusing on catching the armed men who stormed the house, they turned GloRilla's home into a crime scene. They built a case against her, someone who was not even present when it all happened. Since then, not a single suspect has been named. No arrests have been made. And there are no updates about the men who committed the actual crime. GloRilla's family was the one under attack. But somehow, it is her name that ended up in the headlines. People have started asking the questions that matter. Why is marijuana treated like a bigger threat than men with guns? Why are victims being painted as criminals? And how many cases like this are buried before the world even hears about them? This is not just about one search warrant. It is about priorities that are completely out of place. It is about a justice system that seems to care more about headlines than actual justice. And for GloRilla, that spotlight cost her dearly. She lost her safety, her dignity, and her freedom, all because the system chose to focus on the wrong thing. And just when everyone thought things could not get any worse, the media dug even deeper. The moment her name hit the news, judgment came pouring in. But it was not just about the robbery or the marijuana. Suddenly, reporters started bringing up something completely unrelated: a DUI arrest from months ago. Back in April 2024, GloRilla had been pulled over in Gwinnett County after making a U-turn at a red light. She was charged with driving under the influence and a few traffic violations. Yes, it was a mistake. Yes, it made news when it happened. But here is the truth. That incident had nothing to do with the break-in at her home. The cases were separate. The charges were already dealt with. It was in the past. So why was it back on the front page? Because there is a pattern, especially when it involves a black woman in the spotlight. Once she gets arrested, people start digging. They look for anything that fits a story. Anything that can chip away at sympathy and twist the truth. Suddenly, instead of asking why she was arrested after her home was invaded, the conversation shifts to whether she somehow deserved it. As if one unrelated traffic mistake gave the world permission to treat her like a criminal. And that is how the cycle works. One negative headline turns into 2. Then it becomes 20. And soon, the real story, the violent break-in, the scared family, the unfair arrest gets buried under piles of gossip and judgment. GloRilla was not just defending herself in court. She had to fight for her basic humanity. But even with all that noise, her team stood strong. And so did Representative Eric Bell. Because they knew this was never just about her record. It was about something much bigger. What kind of justice system punishes the very people it is supposed to protect? By the end of all this, that question could no longer be ignored. This was never just about one night. It was never just about marijuana in a closet. Or a DUI from the past. What happened to GloRilla showed us something deeper. A system that claims to keep us safe but ends up hurting those who ask for help. She did not break into anyone's home. She did not hold a gun. She was not even there when it all happened. But somehow, when the night was over, she was the one in handcuffs. That is not justice. That is a warning to every future victim who might pause before calling the police. And that is exactly what Representative Bell is working to change for GloRilla, and for everyone who deserves better. House Bill 464 is not just a reaction. It is a plan, a message to every victim. We see you, we hear you, and we are here to protect you. Because when people asking for help end up in jail, the system is not just broken, it is upside down. GloRilla's story hit a nerve. Not because she is famous, but because what happened to her is sadly all too common. How many others have been arrested for trying to do the right thing? How many stayed silent, too scared that calling the police would get them in trouble? And the worst part, the people who actually broke into her home are still free. No names, no arrests, just silence. So maybe this story is not just about GloRilla. Maybe it is about a system that needs to answer for its failures. Maybe it is about every person who was ever told, "Call us if you need help," only to find that help came with handcuffs. The real question now is not just whether her charges will be dropped. The real question is, how many more people will be failed by this system before we finally say enough? If you paused while reading this, you should have. Because GloRilla is not just a rapper. She is a woman who was hurt by the very system that is supposed to protect her. And if she, with her fame and lawyers, can be treated like a criminal while being a victim, imagine what happens to the people without fame, without money, without a voice. That is not just unfair. That is terrifying. So do not just scroll past this. This is your moment to feel it, speak on it, act on it. Whether you have lived something like this or are just shaken by what you are hearing, do not stay quiet. Drop a comment, tag someone, share this story, start the conversation. That is how change begins, with people who are not afraid to make noise. Ask yourself, do victims deserve to be protected? Should GloRilla's charges be dropped? Could House Bill 464 stop this from happening again? Because right now, the message to truth-tellers is clear. Stay quiet or be silenced. But Karen refused to stay quiet. She did not break. She did not hide. She turned her grief into a battle cry. Malcolm stood strong, she said, wiping her tears. Now I'm standing in his place. Within 48 hours, the Warner Vault video reached 7 million views. A petition demanding a federal investigation hit 1.3 million signatures. Hollywood went into panic mode. Top producers quit. Some tried rewriting the past, calling it a mental breakdown. But the truth was already out. People saw the uncut footage, heard his voice, felt his fear, and believed his truth. Malcolm Jamal Warner did not overdose. He did not lose control. They came for him, they erased him, and now, they have been exposed. The silence, gone, the mask, off, and the industry that once hid its secrets behind flashing lights is now drowning in truth. All because Karen Molina White, the woman they ignored, just burned their lies to the ground. Now you know, the threats, the cover-ups, the fake condolences. So let us ask you, can you face the truth they tried to bury? Drop a broken heart if Malcolm's story shook you. Drop a warning sign if you are tired of watching power protect itself, and if you believe truth matters more than money, then do not just scroll. Share this. Let the world feel every scar they tried to hide, because what they buried in silence. We're writing into history. Subscribe if you are not afraid of what comes next. Hit that bell because we are not done yet. The shadows are darker, the voices are louder, and the next secret we uncover, it is going to set the whole system on fire.